Hello, welcome to Scratch Course. In Scratch Course, we are going to learn how to make custom action figures, but with a focus on easy to find materials. The first several videos are going to focus on making a 3D printed action figure, starting with blocking out the figure in Fusion 360. This video is not going to be an in-depth Fusion 360 tutorial, but today I'm going to be showing the basics of making a sketch, inserting a reference photo as a canvas, and some very basic tools to get some starting shapes. You can follow along and copy what I do, or block out your own character or design. The important thing is to not include too much detail. The more detail you add now, the harder it will be to go back and change things. You are aiming to have a basic silhouette and to have a general idea of where all the limbs and body parts go. To begin, you will need to start a basic sketch and add in a height reference. I am having this figure scale with the Transformers Red series, so I'm going to make my figure about 150 millimeters tall. I recommend having a pair of digital calipers to measure figures you have for reference. And make sure you use reference regularly. It's very easy to make something much larger or smaller than you initially planned. To make your sketch, first orient your camera looking down the y-axis. You can do this by clicking the cube in the top right corner. Simply click front and it will automatically turn your camera. Now, in the top left corner, click the sketch button and then select the front view in plane. Now, select the line tool and start your line at the origin point. And move your cursor straight up. It should lock into a 90-degree angle and then type in your wanted value or your figure's height. In my case, I am doing 150 millimeters. It is important you start the line at the origin point because it gives you a nice reference point for the ground, and when we create the feet, it should be easier to make sure they're nice and flat for the figure to stand on. It's also best practice for modeling in general. If you start your figure with the origin point somewhere else, you can have some weird rotations when you export your model to different software for detailing. Now to complete your sketch, all you need to do is hit Finish Sketch. The next thing we will do is insert your reference material as a canvas or an image plane. I have included the files that I used as my reference in the description. You don't have to have your images set up the way I do, but I find it's easiest to break up the body by color and then save the references as different layered images, so you can turn on and off the body as you need. To create a canvas, go to Insert and then Canvas. You will need to navigate to where you saved your reference photos to, then choose the front image. Then choose the same plane as we made our sketch on. Use the tool to scale and move your image to line up roughly with your first sketch. Do the same for the other three images, but rotate your camera by turning the view cube 90 degrees and picking the right plane. Line up the three side view images. They do not need to line up perfectly, they just need to be a rough outline. Name each image accordingly and make sure you can turn the images on and off by selecting the eye next to their names. Now for the base sketch. You're going to make a new sketch on the front plane. Make sure your initial sketch for the height is still turned on. Select the line and find Project under the Create tab. This will project the line onto your new sketch. You should now be able to use the center line as a tool to help you trace one half of the body. We only want to trace one half of the body because we're going to use the mirror tool later to make sure the figure is completely symmetrical. Now using the line and the rectangle tool, block out some basic shapes from your reference. Make sure everything is a closed shape. You will know it's a closed shape if the shape turns blue. If you want to make a curved shape, use the circle and the spline tool. The spline tool will give you some tools to bend and shape the line how you want. You will need to hit the check mark when the line is complete to move on to the next shape. Now that we are done with the sketch, hit finish sketch and then select part of the body. Now use the extrude tool to give that part depth. You will want to try to line up the extrusion with your reference. Use the different direction options to help. 2 sides and symmetrical will be handy for this. The important thing at this step is to make sure every extrusion is a new body. You do not want to join or cut any bodies right now. So now we are going to make another sketch for the side view. I start my sketch on the flat side of the body, so I have some of the body already projected. You realistically can select the side plane and project the whole torso instead of just the waist. It accomplishes the same thing. But do as we did before, trace out the basic shapes of the body. I go and make some more sketches on the front to help me block out the cockpit on the chest. For complicated shapes, it might take a few tries to figure out how you want to block out the shape, but keep experimenting on different methods. This is the best way to learn. Now I'm extruding shapes for the cockpit and using the profile sketch I made to narrow in a better shape. What I did here is an extrusion with an intersection. There are 4 types of extrusions. New body, which ignores other bodies and just creates a new shape. Join, which takes the body you are making and adds it to any selected or intersecting bodies. Cut takes your new body and uses it as a cookie cutter on any selected or intersecting bodies. And intersection, which takes your new body and any intersected bodies and gives you the difference, or the overlap of the bodies. Here a bit of the original extrusion is left over, and I don't like the shape that it makes, so I selected it and hit delete or backspace on the keyboard to get rid of it. I wanted the cockpit to be a bit rounded and not as sharp, so I selected the edge I want, and then used the fillet tool to round over that edge. You don't want to round out everything for blocking, but but doing it to better understand and narrow down your base shapes is fine. I make some more extrusions and some more cuts to refine the shape here. This is a point where you can really mess around with different extrusions and cuts. If you already have two bodies and you want to use them to cut or intersect each other, you can instead use the Combine tool underneath the Modify tab. It works the same as the extrusions. Here I wanted to move a section of the torso up further, so I copied and pasted the body and cut a part out of one of the copies. I then selected the faces I wanted to move forward, and then using the Move tool, I moved them where I wanted them to be, and then combined the shapes back together with the Combine tool. At this point you can combine some of the body together. Think about how the figure will move before you do though. In this case, I'm not going to have any upper torso rotation, so it doesn't matter if the upper torso is combined together. But I don't want to combine the hips and the torso together because I want to have a waist swivel and maybe an ab crunch. Here I want to block out the thrusters on the chest. I know I want them to be the same thickness all the way around, so I make a 2mm line coming out from the edges. I decided that this is too thick, so I selected the faces after I made the extrusion, and I used the push and pull tool to move all the faces the same distance. To make the turbine roughly center in the hole I made, I make a line from each corner and then make a circle coming out from the middle of the line. I know I want the turbine sticking out the same distance as the rest of the chest, so when I make the extrusion I select the pull arrow, and then I click the front of the chest. This lines up the two, extruding them to the same point. For the rest of the body, it's more of the same. You can follow along, but I would recommend trying out the tools in the Modify tab and the Create tab to see if you can figure out how to use the chamfer tool to make some harder edges. Also see if you can move some faces around with the Move tool. Keep in mind the Move tool has some different options for moving faces and for moving whole bodies. You also can move around the pivot point to move an object from a different point or axis. For the hips, arms, and legs, I'm using the same techniques as I did for the torso. So I'm going to play the footage a little bit faster. Blocking can be a free-form exercise. Experiment with the tools to see what you can make. I wouldn't try to go for any more detail than I did here though. If you do, it might make life more difficult for yourself in the following videos. For the shoulder wings, I use the revolve tool. Take a few different passes without getting a shape I like, but honestly I don't like the shape I ended up with. This is 100% okay, you can always change things along the way. Your design will change pretty drastically once you start trying to make things move. So if you don't like the solution you came up with today, don't stress about it, it's a part of the design process. The last thing we are doing today is reflecting the body over the side plane. Select each part and then select Mirror in the Create tab, and then choose the plane you would like to reflect over. For the head, torso, and hips, make sure the mirror is a join, because you will want them to be one object. For the arms and legs, make sure New Body is selected. Before we end, I want to point out that I very specifically did not do any detail for the head. Fusion 360 is not a great program for doing face sculpting. When we get to that point, I will show you the basics of making a face sculpt in Blender and then cutting up the sculpt to use in Fusion 360. This video might have been short and a bit basic, but next time you'll be using your blocked out sculpt to create an articulated arm. We will be going over 3 types of arms: ball jointed, single elbow, and double elbow. That'll be all for now. Thank you for coming to Scratch Course. Please like and subscribe and consider supporting the channel on Patreon.